Hello, my name is Karl Haushalter. I'd like to thank the SENCER Summer Institute organizers for giving me this opportunity to share some reflections from my teaching during the COVID-19 pandemic. As way of introduction, I teach at Harvey Mudd College. Harvey Mudd is a small residential liberal arts college of science and engineering located in Claremont, California, about 30 miles east of Los Angeles. We're a member of the Claremont Colleges Consortium. Today, I'll be talking about a class that I taught this summer online through Harvey Mudd. And this is a class that previously had focused almost exclusively on the HIV-AIDS global pandemic. But this year, I decided to draw some comparisons and contrasts with COVID-19 and spent a considerable amount of class time highlighting these areas of overlap between these two diseases and also their important distinctions and differences. In terms of similarities, an important one that right away comes to mind is the origin. Both are the result of zoonosis. And in this module, I was able to talk about DNA sequencing technologies and analysis tools and talk about how scientists know the origin of specific viruses. We also spoke about conspiracy theories and alternative explanations, non-scientific explanations of the origins of these diseases. The class also took note of the ways in which the discovery of the viruses, the way that they emerged in the popular press, colored the names that we use to describe these viruses in common speech in our communities, and unfortunately in very harmful and stigmatizing ways. We also in this class talked about transmission of the viruses and how scientists determined that from laboratory studies and from looking at epidemiological data. We talked about prevention and the psychology of prevention and how challenging it is from a psychological standpoint to motivate pro-healthy behavior changes. In the molecular biology unit, we explored the viral life cycle. We noted a lot of similarities and overall flow of the viral life cycle and differences, the chief which being that HIV is a retrovirus, whereas the SARS coronavirus is not. And this is a rich playground for exploring concepts in eukaryotic molecular cell biology. Things like the ribosome frame shift that is common to both of these viruses. And so this is some really cool molecular biology where different protein products are made as a result of this really cool secondary and tertiary structural elements inside of the RNA that is encoded by both viruses. The class highlighted the ways that this knowledge of the biochemistry of the virus can be used to develop therapeutics. Very reminiscent of AZT, remdesivir, which is a drug that has shown some benefit in treating COVID-19, is a prodrug that its active form blocks, is a chain terminator for viral replication. HIV initially began in the coast and has now started to really concentrate in the south. And this non-random distribution of cases of HIV is another theme that the class explored, looking at the various factors that explain this. Likewise with COVID-19, the way that demographics and politics and specific policy choices have influenced the spread of the pandemic was an important topic that the course focused on and the students really engaged really deeply in. The class spent a fair amount of time talking about racial disparities. These are pre-existing racial disparities that are present, and these viruses really shine a light on. And for example, in HIV, even though Black Americans are only 12% of our population, they account for 43% of new HIV diagnoses. COVID-19, we're seeing these same disparities show up. Here we're looking at charts of COVID-19 hospitalization rates. We can see 4 or 5 times higher rates of hospitalization for COVID-19 among different ethnic and racial groups. And this leads very nicely into discussion of, well, what can we do about this? If so much of this is caused by systems of oppression and that are well entrenched in our society, how can we disrupt these? And this is an opportunity to look at the Black Lives Matter movement and think about it with a historical perspective, looking at ACT UP or the NAMES Project, which was responsible for bringing us the AIDS quilt. And the AIDS Quilt is a great example of a collective community mourning, and that's something that with COVID-19, we haven't yet figured out a way to mourn the way that we have some of the other tragedies that our nation has faced. In terms of assignments for this course, I was more creative than I have been in the past. I asked students to do things like write a letter to a public official to advocate a policy based on something they learned about HIV to explain a policy that should be taken with COVID-19, or to write a letter from the future to someone from the early 80s. One thing to consider about COVID-19 is that the students at this point are feeling a bit oversaturated with COVID-19, and so you might go into this topic with some caution, and also be aware that several of our students have been directly impacted either through health or economically by COVID-19. This gives me a chance to give a quick shout out to Maze Emad, who's done some really wonderful work talking about trauma-informed pedagogy. And she, among other authors, has been really promoting this and the importance of using a trauma-informed teaching methods to be intentional about meeting our students' needs. As we think about HIV and COVID, ultimately, I think the most important takeaway for me has been that of hope, that even though HIV is a story of a lot of tragedy and unfinished business, it is also ultimately a story of hope in terms of the progress that we have been able to make working together as scientists and activists and clinicians coming together. Thank you very much for listening to this presentation. I really appreciate it. I'm happy to talk more with anyone throughout the conference. Please find me in one of the discussion rooms. If you'd like to contact me, my email is haushalter@hmc.edu. Thank you very much.